the award. So I won the Women in Innovation Award the second time that I applied. My first attempt was unsuccessful, but basically a little background around my business. I started teaching children coding in a shed in the back of my garden due to a response from parents who asked. I just said I was sort of interested in teaching children to code, and I had all these mums kind of jump on me and say, please teach my child, I'll find you students. And then I started teaching 8 children in my garden, and then they re-enrolled, and then I got more students, and then the whole company kind of grew organically, and I had basically started a business without necessarily intending to. And I found that because I was so reliant on human capital, it wasn't that scalable. So I was always looking for ways to make my business operate in more efficient ways. And I came up for an idea for an initial platform, and I applied for the Women in Innovation grant to help me develop a prototype for it. I'd had a background in UX design. That was my kind of career before I had children and started teaching children to code. And I applied for the Women in Innovation grant, didn't get it. And then COVID happened, and we found ourselves teaching children online. And I realized that this was an opportunity to gather a lot of information around the shortcomings of the tools available for online education. And so I sent out a whole bunch of questionnaires, gathered a lot of data, and I used this information and a little proof of concept as the foundation for my next application. And I found at that point, I was much clearer around what I wanted to build, and I was able to prove a need for it much more succinctly and effectively because I'd gathered all this data. So that was kind of my story, and what I'm trying to build is a learning experience platform for hybrid online and in-person digital skills classes, cohort based. So that's the project that I started with the grant. Just go on to the next one. So a little bit, I guess, about the award. Obviously, there's a financial aspect to it, a financial aspect of the award, and then the non-financial aspect of the support. And I know that in the application, they do ask how you'll use both aspects of the support. Financial is great. It's £50,000, equity free. You get a chunk of it up front. And it's pretty straightforward. You get a bit of support in terms of running your actual project. So you get a dedicated innovation manager or project manager who helps you move your project along over the course of the year. Then you get access to an Innovate Edge advisor. I saw that mine, Jamil, is on the call. So that was great. So she actually connected me to other Edge opportunities. So they might have different workshops to help you refine your pitch or your business plan. And they connected me to a bunch of experts who could help me with legal aspects of my business or financial planning aspects of my business. And then, of course, there's a whole peer network. So we had a whole bunch of workshops with the other women as a cohort. And that was great because I found other people who are in ed tech, other people who are developing similar types of applications to me. And it was also not just in kind of a skills exchange, but also a support network. So I think it's very hard a lot of times when you're in a leadership position or running your own business to have confidence that what you're doing is the right thing. And I think some aspects of meeting these other women was really great in terms of helping me have confidence that I'm doing the right thing, I'm going in the right direction, and just exchanging ideas. So that was really wonderful. In terms of the application process, there's obviously an online portal. There's scored and unscored aspects of the application. The unscored bits, a lot of it is to help. I think the project description is to help you to give you the correct assessors who might have similar skill sets. And then And then the scope is just binary. There's a scope question. So if you're in scope or out of scope, it'll be yes or no. And then obviously I think in this application, there are 5 scored questions. And when I did it, I had 5 assessors scoring each question out of 10. And now I know that it's sort of, there's a third based on you, and then and then each other question is worth about a 6th of the total score. So you should get a score out of 100. You can keep resubmitting your application until the deadline. So if it's 11 a.m., you can resubmit, at 10, 10:15, if you find little typos, so you don't have to just do it once. But I wouldn't recommend waiting until the last 15 minutes, because I think the servers sometimes get, that there's some statistic like 99% of people, submit in the last 30 minutes or something. And then, if you make it through to the next stage, there's a 10-minute interview, or you give a 10-minute presentation with 10 slides. So in terms of the actual application itself, the scored questions, it's pretty much like writing a business plan. So you identify your need, your opportunity, and then a project plan for what you would do with the financial aspect of the award, and how you'd ensure that you apply it so that it's sustainable. I would recommend having a very clear idea of what your project is going to be, and how it supports the need that you've identified for your business. I think that was the big difference between my first and my second attempt, was I had a much more convincing project and a much more convincing need, because I'd gone through the process of collecting my data. And in fact, I've won another grant since, and, I've used that same strategy of like collecting data and showing proof of the need before formulating the application. I would give yourself, obviously, giving yourself time is, kind of, understood, but I do think it took me a good few weeks of focusing on the application to write and rewrite it, because you have to be very succinct. They ask you, there are a whole series of bullet points underneath each question, and I would make sure you address every single bullet point. And that will often take many more words than the 600-word allowance. So you have to kind of keep writing and rewriting to make sure that you answer each bullet point succinctly. Then a little bit more about the actual questions. So like I said, the unscored questions will be used to help you assign an assessor and for the public description. And then the scored questions, like I said, a third is on the video pitch. And when I did it, it wasn't a video pitch. We just answered a question around me as a leader and my potential to motivate other women and be a role model. And when I did answer that question, I provided a whole series of testimonials from other people that I'd worked with in business, again, to support what I was saying. And it is this aspect of the focus on you as a role model that really differentiates this application or this competition from other ones within Innovate UK. This is the only one that I've seen that asks about you as a leader. And I think I've written this elsewhere in the presentation, but basically, the whole impetus for starting this application, from what I remember, is that there were only 7% of Innovate UK applications were made by women. So Innovate UK realized that this was a huge missed opportunity in terms of what women could contribute to the UK economy, and have put forward this award to try and encourage more women into business and innovation. So it is very much about you being a role model, you inspiring other women into innovation and growing businesses. Then, 1/6 of it is the need or challenge that you've identified. The business opportunity. So very much like in a pitch deck, you would have your problem and then your solution. So this is the solution, and then you have to talk about the market and competitors. Then the plan for the award, and I would definitely recommend including a project plan as well as the risk register. So have your Gantt chart ready, be very clear on what the project is and what the outputs will be. And there were all different kinds of projects. So mine was a tech prototype, but Someone else had a series of workshops with young women around, menstruation products. And so there were all sorts of different types of projects, but I would make sure that the project is very well defined. And in that one, I think you talk about the financial and non-financial support, and then finally the vision for you and the business. And in that, you can be very clear around, what constitutes success and what metrics you might have to prove that your project is successful, and how you would implement it and help support the growth of your business with it. I would say that the question that I got scored the lowest on was the need or challenge, because I didn't show how I didn't make the link clearly enough around how my project would support the need. So I would say, even though things seem really obvious to you and you understand the link, you have to make it very clear to assessors. And again, make sure you answer every single bullet point really clearly. And again, how is this award different? Like I said, it's about you. So that's the real kind of focus. They've given like a third of the marks to you as a leader and a role model. They want ambitious people who are going to be role models to other women. And in terms of tips, I think what I was surprised by was that my story, like the sort of starting a business organically from my garden, was more compelling than I thought it was. So I think sometimes these personal anecdotes make you stand out. For me, I think having a very clear project plan really helped, because the clearer the plan, the clearer your vision for what you want to do with the award is, the easier it'll be to just fill in all the questions. It just sort of flows from there. Again, answer all bullet points. With the finances, when I originally submitted the application, I didn't realize that I could claim 20% of my labor costs as overhead. So that's like a standard Innovate UK thing, which I just didn't know. And what I did actually this time around was I found someone through my network who was a grant writer, and I just paid her like for a couple hours work to review my application. And having that outside person was really helpful, because she said, I can only look at it on this Friday, for example. So that gave me a deadline. So I knew I had to get a draft to her by that Friday. So it forced me to finish a rough draft, have her review it. And then, it pushed along that kind of editing process. So I almost felt like it could have just been a friend, who I said, I'll get it to you by Friday, make sure I do it by Friday. And then that was really helpful. And I would say with all Innovate UK applications, they always give you all the assessor feedback. So even if you don't make it through in a particular round, you get very valuable feedback on your business plan and your kind of the sorts of projects you want to work on, because again, you're going to have 5 different people looking at it. And even if your plan or your project might be very clear, a lot of times I found people don't necessarily get it. So it really does help you learn where you need to articulate things more clearly and how you need to communicate better in further grant applications. So that's pretty much the process from my point of view. I'm going to hand it back, I guess, to Esme.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, I think a couple of things really stood out for me, like in thinking about how different this particular award is compared to even other Innovate UK grants, and specifically the focus there is on you and your position as a role model and your own personal story, which I think gives a lot of people quite a unique advantage in being able to apply for this award. So thank you. All right, we are going to jump into the Q&A now. So you can either just put your questions in the chat, and I know that there's already been a couple which I've caught, but you can just write them in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand and I will get to you and you can ask them directly. But first, before that, I want to very quickly introduce Sophie, who is another graduate of the Alternative Funding School, as Heather is. If you just want to do a bit of an introduction, Sophie, and also, share anything you want to highlight around winning the award or your own experiences, that would be fantastic.
Sure, thank you, Esme. That was great, Heather. Yeah, so I'm Sophie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Disposal. We build software to try and help people to better manage their rubbish recycling and resources. And our Innovate UK Women in Innovation project was to build software specifically for NHS trusts. And so yeah, that's what I did. I was in the same cohort as Heather. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I think Heather did an amazing job of kind of explaining all the things to think about and look out for. There's a couple of things I would add. So one is that in the non-scored thing, one part to really take care on is the eligibility or scope, I think it's called, sorry, which is that if you don't clearly explain how you meet the scope of the competition, that you are eligible for it, you won't even get assessed. So just, even though that's not scored, make sure you really, really clearly explain how you are relevant for this particular award. An annoying thing that I found is that the word count on your computer sometimes isn't the same as the word count on the online application. So again, just give yourself time to put it in and check, because sometimes bullet points are counted or they're not, or I can't really remember what it was, but anyway, I found that they weren't the same, and so that can be annoying when you've perfectly crafted your 600 words and then you find that you're at 603 and you're like, oh god. And this week, for the first time ever, I was an assessor on the Young Innovators Award, and so my job with that was watching their videos, and I was amazed at how few of them didn't really properly answer all the things they were asked to in their video. So I would just stress again, read what they want you to talk about in your video and really, really try to make sure that you're covering all the points that are listed there. Because as an assessor, you're meant to be scoring against those things. And if people, even if they're amazing and they sound wonderful, if they haven't kind of jumped through the appropriate hoops and ticked the right boxes, you know, technically you're not meant to score them against those things, and that can be heartbreaking as an assessor being on the other side of it. So just be really clear about, you know, going through those things and really, really make a case for why the award will help you, like you as a person, and how much difference it will make to you, not just the money but the whole package. Like really make sure again you're talking about, it's the mentoring, it's the extra support, it's the, you know, the network, all of that stuff. So yeah, they're the things that I would add.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, some important things to think about here as well. You know, like this can apply to grants at large. Yes, it's about your idea and your business and what you want to do with the money, but it's also just about ticking some boxes and making sure that you are covering the points that they've asked you to do, and which can sometimes be much harder than you think, and why these applications take such a long time, because you need to be so detailed in how you respond. Okay, so questions. I would say that, you know, I think I would advise to use this opportunity to ask really specific questions about what both Heather and Sophie put in their applications. Like, you know, there's part of this which is just understanding what the questions are, understanding their criteria, but a lot of that we've either covered or you can find on their website. But here it's like, let's get into the nitty-gritty here in this safe space to really work out how you win this award and what you need to do to be able to do it. So I'm going to start off with questions in the chat. I already see that someone's raised their hand. I'll start in the chat because I might lose the questions, and then we'll move over to you, Grace, in a second, if that's all right. All right, so we've got one question. I think this is directed at Heather. How were the testimonials provided during the video pitch or part of the written content?
Yeah, so when I applied, they allowed for you to add attachments, and I'd use this, you know, every time they give you the, an optional attachment, I definitely upload it to support your application. So yeah, it was an optional attachment, and I just provided a whole bunch of testimonials from business colleagues. So maybe, yeah, you could include it on the video somehow, but that's what I did.
Okay, perfect. Good tip. So anything that they say is optional, it is not optional. And it's all about just being able to provide as much information as you can that is useful and succinct. Okay, another question. Do you talk about just national UK-based competition or global competition? I think that's for you as well, Heather.
Yeah, no, I mean, this this is just, I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but this was just a UK competition.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Heather, this is Jyoti
Hi.
here. So the question was, when you were talking about your business plan and your growth plans.
Yes.
Right. So.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yeah. So my business, we are setting up foundations for global impact and growth. It's quite possible. I mean, we are looking also at an international strategy for launch, but the starting market would be UK. So since it's a UK Innovate grant, it can be tricky, right? That they want to know competition, but do they care about global competition or just
yeah, I mean, I certainly, because I'm building a software product. The eventual market for it will be global. Yeah. The global players will come to the UK. So I think anyone that you will be competing with, they want to know how you're different and why there's an argument for what you're doing.
Got it. Cool.
That it's going to be viable. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Perfect. All right, Isabel, a question from Isabel. How much financial information do you need to provide? How many years forecast? Good question.
I don't think I provided a forecast in terms of earnings on my, the only financial information I included was the costs of the project. I don't know if Sophie, if you.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I was going to say. So yeah, it's the financial information you have to provide is the project costs. I mean, obviously in, if you, in terms of your vision and stuff like that, if you wanted to talk about what what your growth plans are and how you kind of see your revenue grow, you could definitely put that in there. But as in, there's no requirement to provide cash flow forecasts or anything like that going forward. Unlike the Women in Innovation loan, where you have to give them everything for the rest of eternity, and it's awful. So, but don't get me started on that. So yeah, but no, for this, it's just your project costs.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a useful thing to think about when you're comparing different funding options. If you haven't done a forecast and that that's going to take you a long time, or you might need to employ somebody or hire somebody to do that piece, perhaps this grant is a better opportunity than, say, a loan, which then requires you to put that together. Okay, one from Beth. Hi, Beth. Do you know how many people apply versus how many grants are awarded? I don't know. I know that it's up to 50 people per year get the grant, but that is dependent on how much funding they have that particular year. And I know that Innovate UK ran a briefing event maybe 2 weeks ago, and 900 people signed up. I don't know if Heather or Sophie have any more information.
With our cohort, and Sophie, correct me if I'm wrong, it was originally supposed to be 10 awardees. There were between 700 and 800 people applying, and they had such a high caliber of applicants, they gave it to 40 of us. So they got more money, I guess, at the last minute, or they asked for more money because it's been such a successful program. So I don't know if Sophie, if that's your understanding, but
yeah, that's exactly my understanding. And I think last year it was even higher, as in, so I think it's competitive for sure. So it is, yeah, more than 1,000 people I think maybe applied last year, and then they awarded it to 40. So
yeah, it's competitive, like all Innovate UK grants. And that's why we're emphasizing here to understand how it's different and how it might be valid for you. Okay, I'm gonna do one more question from the chat and then move to the questions in Zoom. Okay, one from Ashley, great question. What's been the most valuable part of the award? I don't know if Sophie, you want to answer that, as perhaps Heather's already covered it a little bit.
Sure. For me, the most valuable bit has been the other women, like Heather, because they're amazing, and getting to spend like valuable time together and actually get to know each other and find that you've got all of these other people who are having the same headaches as you and willing to kind of support you and champion you when you're doing well, and all of that stuff is just so invaluable, like so much more than, I mean, obviously the money's helpful, don't get me wrong, but like actually meeting all these amazing women and having this huge network is just awesome. It's so good. So this may be a sort of slightly cheesy answer, but it is genuinely it is genuinely true for me, definitely. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You know, and it's just, it's again, you know, it's a lot of the motivation for pushing your business forward has to come from you. And then when you see the other women kind of doing great things, you know, it pushes you forward, and, you know, it's been very helpful. I have to say, I have really loved the network of women more than I thought. You know, it's been more valuable than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. So I think perhaps 10% of people from the Alternative Funding School came from this grant, and that was certainly the main highlight, was just being able to meet other people, and that peer support was really invaluable. Okay, I'm keen to get through all these questions as we have loads. So let's go to Grace, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks Esme, and thanks Heather and Sophie. That was really, really helpful. I'm also like shivering in my boots because I just applied for the Young Innovators thing. So the fact that you've been a marker, Sophie, and I was literally thinking, didn't attach a risk register, great. But anyways, that aside, so this might be like a really naive question, but in terms of the business plan, like I've never made a proper business plan in my life. Like I've built a platform for managing culture and change in organizations, and the way I've sort of iterated my services or developed the technology has totally just been a result of, you know, what I've delivered and then the feedback that comes back. So I have in my mind exactly like the next iterations I want to do in terms of how I evolve the technology. But when building the business plan, is it basically saying this is how I would spend the £50,000, or is it saying this is how I'll spend my time across the next 12 months, or is it a combination of both of those things?
Sophie, I don't know if you want to take it, or I can.
Yeah, I can have a go. So when you say the business plan, I think you might mean the project plan. Or that's, yeah, cool. Okay, I'm just checking that that's, yeah. So the way that I do project plans is that for us, we're a software company, so most of our costs are labor costs. Mm-hmm. So basically I work out how much time it's gonna take us to do the thing that I want to do. Sometimes I have to shave things off, or sometimes it's like, oh, actually we've got a bit of spare time, we can add a bit more on there, and then basically work it out based on people's salaries. So we've got a team, so obviously there's different salaries for different people, but if it's just you, then work out what your salary, or, you know, you probably know what your salary is or what you want to get paid, and then you kind of say, well, 50 grand would equate to X amount of my time. Like Heather said, that if your time doesn't take up that whole 50 grand and you don't have other people do it, remember that you can add 20% for overheads, so that if you do it at the flat 20% of your labor costs, then they don't ask any questions and you don't have to provide any like extra evidence of that. They just assume that's like going to cover electricity and rent and, you know, kind of general things like that. So that's a useful thing if you're not getting up to 50 grand with your labor. And the one thing to note on this is it has to be exactly 50 grand, like as in you can't be a penny over. And if you're a pound, I think when we did ours, because of rounding, it was like £2 under, and thankfully they didn't reject me for it, and they basically said, I'm adding that on to this thing, is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so it can be a bit artificial in terms of working out your time, be exactly £50,000 worth or whatever, but that's what you need to do. So just plan what you want to do in that 12 months for that project, and basically say, this is what I'm going to spend this time doing, and this is what I'm going to deliver if you give me this money. So does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I have an offshore development agency I work with in Ukraine. So that's typically how I cost a project, is I collaborate with them. In this instance, if you're working with a team that is not UK based, is it like, do not include that in terms of how you're spending the £50,000?
They'd be classed as a subcontractor, and if too much of it is under subcontractors, they definitely don't like it. I don't know I haven't looked at the exact details on this version of the competition. And Heather, I don't know if you've got any experience on that, but certainly I would try to keep it as much aimed at you and in the UK as possible, and ideally not subcontractors as much as, but if you need a little bit, that's fine, but not like, oh, £30,000 of it's going
Got you.
to these guys.
I would agree, because they want to make sure that you're developing your own competencies as a business, and it's not going to, 90% to somebody else's business. So yeah, I think mine was about 60-40, 40% being the subcontractors. But I don't, and there are different rules in different Innovate UK competitions.
Thank you.
We had a comment from Vicky in the chat. She says, from memory, I think they want it UK based unless there's a very good reason. So perhaps something just to dig into a bit more on the website, or even I think, you can probably chat to somebody and get a bit of advice directly from them on that particular question. Rachel, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hopefully that's me, Rachel Sheila.
That is me.
There's usually about 5 Rachels in the room. Hey everyone. So I have 2 questions. One being, do they look for key specific trends like tech or women in tech, social value, sustainability? Are they looking for specific buzzwords? That's number 1. And then in terms of your scope, do you kind of look at what you're doing right here, right now in the 12 months, or do you kind of put in future plans on expansion and things like that?
Yeah, I think, again, your project has to support the need that you've identified for you as a business. So however you kind of prove that, or the innovation that you're proposing for the competition, there is like the UK industrial strategy, and the more that you can connect your innovation to different government initiatives or papers, that are recent, that government has placed an emphasis on, I think the better. I think the first Women in Innovation Award, you did have to answer the, one of the 4 points of the UK industrial strategy. They've taken that away, but you do, the more it relates to government initiatives or priorities, I think the better, if you can make that connection.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's not so much about just chucking buzzwords in, but as finding like, actually this is this is linked to that, and anything where you're delivering social value. I think they're keen to see that and all that sort of stuff as well. What was your second question? Because I had an answer for it and then it's gone out my head completely when I said that. Sorry.
Yeah, talking about the scope, do you stay synced to the 12-month thing, or can you?
Yes, it's the project. So it's why your project and your application meets their scope. So it's literally, I am a woman and I am innovating, and as in literally read the things that it says you have to do and tell them that that's what you're doing in this project.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, did that answer your questions?
Absolutely, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have a question from Mel to Sophie. I'd love to know more from Sophie about how she pitched her software project as a build on an existing project. We're in the same situation, already have a software product, but 50K doesn't go very far. How do you make the award project seem like a significant step forward for your business? Oh, interesting question.
Yeah, so we had a compliance dashboard which had basic functionality that helped anybody who produces waste to manage the compliance of that waste. But we knew that there was stuff in there that didn't meet NHS Trust's complex waste producers' needs, and we were lucky to have contact in a big NHS Trust to talk through this with, and that's kind of, it came about through a conversation with them. So we knew we wanted to build additional functionality onto it, and we just pitched it as that. Basically, it is an innovation on what we've got. We've got the kind of foundations, but we know it doesn't do everything it needs to. We've done work on kind of the other side, on the waste management side of things, but we really want to build this very specific type of software for complex waste producers, and we know that these are the sort of things that we need to build that don't exist at the moment and don't exist on the market. And so yeah, we just kind of pitched it like that, and that seemed to be fine. In terms of, I suppose we as an organization, we're very small. None of us get paid very much because we really care about what we do. And so we actually, 50 grand goes quite a long way for us, but I know that that's not always the case, and that developers can be extremely expensive and we're just extremely lucky. So I know that for other people, they have done much more kind of compact projects in terms of, you know, like they're going to take their thing and they're going to apply it in this one specific new way, and kind of, and they've got funding for that. So as in, there is, as long as you are innovating and as long as you're pushing your boundaries, I think you can make that case. So yeah, hopefully that answers that okay.
Did that answer your question, Mel? Brilliant. Oh, an interesting one from Alyssa. Hello, nice to see you. Is it okay to be honest, realistic about failure and setbacks that have shaped our journeys to date? Anybody want to take that one?
I think probably it would be fine as long as you're explaining how you're going to grow from that and how you're going to take that and go forward. So I think I don't think it has to be seen as a negative, and I think it, you know, it definitely could be in there, but I suppose it's probably a good idea to focus more on the future stuff and what you want to do going forward, rather than spending too much time maybe on that. Although certainly in the video they definitely kind of ask you to kind of talk about that a little bit, so that might be a place to kind of touch on that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've got, yeah.
No, I would agree, and I think you know, maybe if it's, you can use it as proof for the viability of what you're doing now, you know, but again, I wouldn't, you know, they want viable, sustainable businesses. So as long as it's kind of, again, focused on the future and growth.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Because specifically, we were part of a government accelerator and developed a prototype. And then at the very, very last minute, they were just about to sign off on all the funding. There was a change of personnel and a new policy was announced and everything got pulled. And so that's the project that we'd be taking to this. And I suppose it's like, you know, it's that, yeah, so yeah, probably not saying too much about that. Though there's some real strength in the work that we've done, because it was really co-produced and work done very closely with government in response to a need. But then at the last minute, they've gone off on a bit of a tangent. Yeah, and I guess that just shows that that they don't see that need as being quite so pressing anymore, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. So as long as you can prove that that need is pressing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. We've got a question from Tony. Can we have some clarity around the 20% issue? He's a bit confused by it.
So I would just say, you can, so if you say that you've got a 30K labor charge, you could add 20% or 6K onto that as overhead. So then you'd have 14K left for some subcontractors, let's say.
And just to say that labour is, because somebody's asked a question about salaries as well. So as in, the labour cost is your internal gross salary cost. So it includes national, like employers' national insurance contributions, pension contributions, all of that. And so that's for anyone who's on PAYE in your company, basically, can be, you know, labour costs. I hope that makes sense. And then, yeah, like Heather said, the 20% is that whatever those labour costs are, so not subcontractors, not material costs, not anything else, just the labour costs, you can add 20% of whatever your total labour costs are as overhead. Still in that 50 grand top amount.
Did that answer your question, Tony? I know there's quite a few finance questions in the chat. I think hopefully that covers all of it, but if there's clarifying questions, you can unmute yourself or ask them in the chat. Okay, let's get through a couple more questions. A quick one from Joe. Is there a list of eligible costs we can reference somewhere? How much can be allocated to marketing, etc.?
I don't think that they, from memory, don't quote me, I don't think they're, marketing is an eligible cost, but I'm sure that it is somewhere on the UK, the Innovate UK website or the KTN website. I could, you know, I can try and find it or send it on.
Yeah, I think because they're sort of R&D projects, the idea is that the majority of what they're funding is R&D. So it's you're not really allowed to do commercial work with it, for example. But one way you can sort of slightly get around that is by some of that so you can't kind of go out and do out and out sales and get them to pay for that, but you can do market research. So you can have people who might be salespeople talk to customers about what they want and about, you know, and you can kind of fund that, but you can't fund them just being out and out salespeople. So there's ways to be creative with it, but it is basically it's costs that help with research and development.
Wonderful. And somebody has just said, Yoti, please let me know if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, has just said they covered a lot of the financial related questions on the briefing call. And there is a recording of that on their website. I can also link it in the email I'll send afterwards. It was like a 2-hour event, I think, that was very detailed and summarized more of the particular details around eligibility and things like that. All right, so we've got 10 minutes left. Keep the questions coming. I'll try and get through as many as possible. Got one from Laura. Hi, Laura, nice to see you. I think there was a strong regional element last year, so applicants were selected equally in each country region. It's great for levelling up, but it meant that competition was particularly high in London. Do you know if it's the same this year, and any tips for navigating that?
I don't know the answer to that in terms of what happened with our competition and how that worked. That's not something I have an answer to.
I'm pretty sure they'll still be taking a regional approach because they kind of need to, in terms of they're trying to make sure that they could get good coverage. But where there is a lot more competition, there is also more winners. So I think there is, although the competition is, there's more people applying from London, more people from London also get the award. So like, for example, in our cohort, I'm the only person from the Northwest who got it. Maybe I'm lucky and I'm the token because they needed somebody from the Northwest, or maybe they just didn't give very many people a chance from there. I don't know. But so there's no way to navigate because you're where you are, right? So unless you've got regional offices all over the country and you could say that you're in a different regional office and you want to try and pick somewhere you think is quieter, I think you just have to take your chances.
Yeah. I mean, I know from the it's definitely a focus, and they're attempting to certainly appeal to more regions across the UK. Okay, more questions from Sam. Can the Innovation Award be used for a project that earns commercial income, e.g. a membership fee?
I think so. I mean, if you could, the thing is if you can fund it through your own income, then in a way you're unlikely to get the award because you could fund it yourself. So you have to make a compelling case why you can't fund it yourself, why you need public funding. But there's no reason why you can't have a commercially viable business that also wants this money. Do you know what I mean? So as in it's not that you have to be pre-revenue or a not-for-profit or anything like that. Like as in, if I've understood the question right.
Did that answer your question, Sam? Yes, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point to think about how to show that you need that money and that you can't create it in other ways, that you specifically need it for an R&D project that you can't fund. Again, just thinking about if you're eligible and that particular project is eligible. All right, keep your questions coming. We can maybe do one or two more. I'm trying to see which questions I may have lost in the chat. There was a question about which we sort of may have covered slightly. What is the difference between the projects funded by women in innovation, the Women in Innovation Awards, and the other Innovate UK programs such as the SMART grants?
Again, I think it's this emphasis on you as a leader that you know, in I haven't done the latest SMART grant application, but it was slightly more detailed in certain aspects of the project from what I remember. I don't know if Sophie has greater clarity on that, but this is the only one that really asks about you and your experience.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's sort of similar to the SMART grant in the sense that it's not aimed at a particular problem or challenge or kind of sector or anything. So as in, you know, people, there's everything from people who are doing physical things to people doing technical things to people doing, you know, all sorts of different stuff. So as in there's no kind of barrier in that sense, which is the same as the SMART grants. But like Heather said, this is very much about you being a leader and being a role model and about you as a person. And so it's very different in that sense. And I think the thing, yeah, SMART grants have I think they're the most competitive of all of the competitions because they're so broad, and because you can get quite a bit of money for them if you get them right. Whereas most Innovate competitions tend to be quite focused on a specific challenge area, or, you know, it's like, we're looking at ways to make railways smarter or whatever it is. And it's like, unless you've got something that fits with that, you're not applying. So, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so maybe we've got one more question, one that I missed in the middle. It's quite specific. You may not have an answer to it, perhaps, but perhaps you can offer a little bit of advice from your personal experiences. So this is from Hannah. I'm the founder of a company that creates and produces educational material, toys and games to help kids learn Arabic in a fun way. These products are used at schools and homes, and parents, teachers are asking for a digital aspect of the material. This side is what I would like to apply for, but wondering if it's too niche, first of all. And since it's in Arabic, the developers aren't located in the UK. So would that be seen as negative? I think the last bit we have sort of covered, possibly might be better if they're in the UK, but the first aspect, whether that might be a little bit too niche. Any opinions?
I don't think it's too niche at all. You know, you can talk about the need for it in the UK for Arabic speakers and the need to kind of probably make it more accessible and, you know, by digitizing it. And there was actually a similar project where there was a game that was a physical game, and they used the grant to make a digital online version of it in our cohort. So yeah, I wouldn't think it's too niche at all. In fact, you know, it's good because there may be a very specific market for it that's not served.
Yeah, I would say largely like grants across the board are often sort of not better suited, but also appropriate for projects that might seem a bit niche and you might not be able to get other types of funding. Okay, so thank you, Sophie, for answering the question about the company accounts. There's some more questions coming up in the chat about the company account. I don't know if you want to just answer them very quickly, Sophie, here, or you want to go in the chat. We've got maybe 2 minutes left.
So in answer to the, like, about the sole trader and the company's house stuff, I think because you have to be a micro, small or medium SME, I'm not sure you could be a sole trader. So I think if you've not been operating for a year as an organization, I'm not sure, but I'm not an expert in that. You might be better off getting a definite answer from somebody else on that. And then I think maybe this thing about the KTM website. So what it is if they are worried about your financials, I think they'll check on Companies House that you are a kind of, you know, that you're trading in an okay way and that you've got enough money to kind of do the project, basically. So then they might check your accounts, but I've never had to supply company accounts. I don't think. Heather, I'm looking at you to just, as in make sure I haven't somehow wiped that from my memory, but yeah. Again, I had to do it for the Women in Innovation loan, which I didn't get, but I didn't have to do it for this.
Perfect. I hope that answers all the questions about the company accounts. Yeah, possibly one just to double check on the website, but I think you're also right. I don't think you can be a sole trader. All right, so I think those are all the questions that we can get through today. Thank you so much, Heather and Sophie, for joining. I hope everyone has found it useful just to really think about whether this might be a good opportunity for you and what are the main things you need to think about when you start applying, and most importantly, give yourself enough time. The applications are open right now, but you've got time, a couple of weeks to write them. So don't try and apply today straight after this event. Thank you so much for joining. We'll be running more of these events, specifically around different funding options and sort of digging into the nitty-gritty of them. And I will follow up with an email with the link to apply and a couple of other links from Innovate UK. But thank you so much. I will give you back 1 minute of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck, anyone who applies.
Yeah, good luck.